It's... So welcome to the standict.eu 2023, even before 2021, although it does write 2023 webinar series. So looking for the future. My name is Joel Myers. I'm chair of Smart Cities for the IEEE IoT initiative. And it's my great honor to be moderating today's webinar, which is dedicated to smart cities and the global perspectives on digital transformation. We have an incredible lineup of international experts who will be briefing us on their organizations and activities, and then we'll follow up with some questions and answers from the audience in 30 minutes, hopefully if we have time, of panel discussion on various points of view with regards to what's going on in the world in digital transformation and how things like COVID have affected priorities and how standards can be key for interoperability, not just within cities and multiple disciplines across cities, but within regions and across the world. I would like to start with the hosts, if you like, of this great webinar series, which is the European Commission, and with Eddie Hardock. He's head of the Unit for Technologies for Smart Communities at the European Commission. Thank you so much for joining us, Eddie. And if you would like to get the ball rolling, I'll pass it over to you. Thank you.
Sure. Well, thanks all first for giving me the first floor and saying that I host, and it's well done, I think, from the Commission side to say that we host and let the others do the work. But let's leave it at that for the moment. Let me just open my slideshow. I think it's coming up, and then I need to change the display setting. There we go. So what I would like to do is not talk about standardization in general, but give really a more specific EU focus in the 5 minutes that I have. And our focus is really built around an interoperability framework that we've had for the last 20, 30 years. We've been working on that in a much more global context than just the smart cities and communities as such. But recently we zoomed in on the smart cities and communities. And one of the things that came out of that reflection that we have, but it is not new to many of you, is that we should not really look at these cities and communities and the smartness of them as a sector analysis and only part of the administrative and public services, the e-government part, if you like. It's really a horizontal thing that brings a number of the sectors together. And that is also how we want to build our intervention in terms of the interoperability. So it's not only at the levels of government, but it's also between the various sectors that operate within the cities and communities. And that is why we take this as a first slide. It's a horizontal thing. Secondly, interoperability is not only the technical part. I'm sure we will focus today on the technical part, but there's also cultural elements, there's legal interoperability, organizational, semantic interoperability. So it's much more complex than just a set of standards and we are there. And that is really the main message that comes from that interoperability framework that I think is relevant for today. Secondly, then we looked at what does it actually mean to have a city that is transformed in a digital manner. Often we only look at the apps and the COVID app and we think it's all great, and then we forget what is actually behind that. A COVID app would not work if you don't have 4G and 5G. If you have to log into a Wi-Fi of a restaurant you go into and then show your app, it's not going to work. So you need the infrastructure on the connectivity. You need the middle layer of data that are somehow working together, and then the technical interoperability. And then from that you build the various applications, and one of the killer applications that we would like to use as a vehicle towards a number of use cases are these local digital twins. If you have a genuine network of local digital twins in the European Union, you really get somewhere in terms of providing the right services to your population. In order to build all of that organizationally, organically, we decided to work with a number of representative organizations and build that movement, which is called the Living in.eu. It's not the traditional Commission or EU thing where we write a directive and then we instruct people how it will work, but it's actually growing on us gradually, where the Commission can play in a facilitating and animating role. But a lot of real work is done by the constituency, led by their mayors, who actually declare politically that they want to go into a direction that allows us to have an ecosystem that evolves over time and avoids vendor lock-in to particular suppliers. I think that's a pervasive element in the work that we are doing, the technological sovereignty, not only of the EU as a whole, but of each city, to keep control of the data, keep control of the technology that we use. And that is what this movement is trying to do. Of course, in order to do that, you need to find some sort of technical system. And I will leave it only with this slide because I know that Martin will be much more extensive on this. So the technical group then said, like, what do we actually need to do to get there? And one of the conclusions was, it doesn't work to just choose one standard. We choose one standard and then we write a law and then everyone needs to apply it. It doesn't work. You actually need to look at what are the minimum interoperability mechanisms to bring various standards and various ecosystems together. And that has been the starting point of our work within the EU for the moment. We will then, as a European Union, provide small amounts of funding to actually make sure that this ecosystem works. And I put it in one slide, but I won't labor the slide. We will give some support for the movement itself. We will give some support to set up a real EU communities data space where all these data get together, and then also facilitate the setting up of a network of local digital twins for all, hopefully 95,000 municipalities that we have in the European Union. I would like to stop there in terms of my 5 minutes, if that's okay with everyone, and come back to a number of those points in the discussion later on. Thank you.
Eddie, that's a brilliant kickoff. I love the ideas of the horizontal approach, looking at digital twins on a local level and then connecting them up and being a facilitator. I think that's something that we'll get back to in the discussion in the panel as well. So thanks so much for that presentation. And I'll go on to a different area of the world. So we'll move out of Europe and go into Africa. I would like to welcome Najat Zaruk, who is director of the African Local Government Academy, representing the United Cities and Local Governments in Africa. UCLG is a huge organization that works alongside municipalities. And just in Africa, it has 2,000 cities that it's working with. So I'll pass over to Najat for her introduction.
Thank you very much, Joel. Good morning, everyone. I'm very glad to join this timely event for us to share with you our modest experience, how we are trying to move digital and smart. Please, quickly, to allow me to respect the time. Who we are, quickly, we are a gathering of 54 national association of local authorities covering the 5th region of Africa, created since 2005. And we are working and pledge to build the unity and integration of the continent from its grassroots, from its communities. Next, please. Next, please. So you can see here, we are the regional section of UCLG World in Africa. Our headquarters is in Rabat, in Morocco. And we are sponsored both by Morocco, by European Commission, and also members' fees. Next, please. Our vision, as I said, is to leave no one, no place behind by connecting people, institutions, communities, promoting decentralization, local governance, and also based on a very, very diverse methodology where we found advocacy, capacity building, knowledge sharing, etc. Next, please. Next. So since the pandemic, we tried to stay connected in time of this pandemic by, first of all, empowering our members, our networks to stay connected, to continue their activities. Next, please. This is how we were before the pandemic of the COVID, 100% face-to-face. And after, since the March last year, we become to organize online virtual hybrid events. And we tried, we succeed in reaching about 30,000 participants from Africa and from around the world, thanks to the digital and the online platforms. Next, please. This, next, please, next. There is a lot of lessons learned from this context on our governance, our way of doing our activities. But what we noticed that due to digital, we can now reach a lot of participants and beneficiaries for our activities. Next, please. We noticed also this reality of the digital divide. But what we need above all is to create and advocate for an enabler environment and ecosystem for the digital and smart cities based on solidarity, partnership, cooperation, co-creation, knowledge and experience sharing with more integration and coherence. Next, please. Sorry. So how we are laying the milestone of this new vision and the deal. First of all, we have created an e-academy and it will be launched officially next month. We continue organizing online activities, whether webinars, MOOCs, master degree. Now, please, you can stay on this page. We try to build multi-actor and multi-stakeholders partnerships, including with Joel and his organization. We launch also with the 01 Talent Africa initiative, another sound initiative to empower African youth in partnership with the 01 Edu. The target is to empower 500,000 elite software coders to transform digital education system. We will do a need assessment. We are starting disseminating a survey from Joel organization on smart cities in Africa. Our forum will be hybrid and we work also on data collection. But it's fine to do all this. But we need your support, all those who are involved in this panel, to better structure this new vision and this new deal for the local Africa. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Najat. It's going to be a different perspective from a lot of the 54 sort of countries that are within Africa on digital transformation. So we're really glad to have you on board, and part of this webinar is creating steps for collaboration as well, continuing collaboration. When you mentioned Joel's organization, although I would love it to be my organization personally, just wanted to underline that it's IEEE that we're talking about, and we're starting an incredible relationship with UCLG Africa and Najat, as well as with Dr. Fouad, who will be speaking soon from ICESCO. I wanted to now invite a lovely speaker, someone who I'm working with as well, who has great patience with me whilst working on some standards work that we're doing together on smart cities for the European Commission Understand ICT. It's the director of the European Observatory for ICT. Ray Walsh, would you like to join us and give your introduction?
Thank you very much, Joel. I'm just trying to start my video here at the moment, just so you can see my video as well. Hopefully you can see my screen okay anyway.
Yeah, we can see it.
So I'll do the talk part of it anyway. We can see each other later. So yes, thanks Joel for the introduction. My name is Ray Walsh, and I'm the director of the Standard ICT's European Observatory for ICT Standards. And just wanted to give a quick introduction to some of the activities that Stand ICT is involved in. And primarily, should I say, we have a support remit where we encourage and support through funding engagement, particularly of European experts in international standards projects. And what can be seen here on the screen here is just a little bit of information around some of the core calls that we've had. We're currently up as far as our 5th open call to support our international engagement in standardization, ICT standards. And you can see that 5 out of 10 calls have been launched already. We will have 5 more to come over the next 2 years. We have a functional grants platform where we solicit project proposals from standards experts, and the best of these proposals get funded by our independent expert panel of evaluators. We have lots of interactions through webinars and with third-party SDO engagements, and the Trust IT who coordinates the project, has signed lots of memorandums of understandings with various stakeholders. In the center of the screen here, you can see the European Observatory for ICT Standards, which was released in March 2021. We have currently 8 active technical working groups and a working standards academy. These technical working groups are, as we'll see a little bit earlier, are in the prime or priority target areas for digital single market. And we also support standards collateral engagement by promotional videos and newsletters and these type of activities like the webinars, which is around Joel's key area here, which is smart cities. Very large community engagement, constantly building the standards ecosystem, which is part of Stand ICT's core activities. And we integrate together with lots of different standards activities, where we can perform a hub and coordinate and support those activities as much as possible. Here's an example of just a synopsis of the first number of open calls, 1 to 3. We can see that there was 106 funded applications, nearly €1 million. 96 are long-term funding initiatives and 10 short-term funding initiatives. Different organizations from SMEs up as far as large enterprise. A gender split between male and female. Obviously, we're trying to address that as much as possible to increase the gender balance. And the most targeted projects, as you can see there, the blockchain, cybersecurity, 5G, artificial intelligence. So the larger horizontal technologies and emerging technologies that you would expect to be there. And the square here at the bottom just shows you where the SDO split is in terms of the vast majority are JTC1, the Joint Technical Committee between ISO and IEC. But also you can see it spreads across Sensen like ETSI, ITU, IEC and ISO, IEEE, various other standards of our development organization. So that's a nice synopsis then of where a lot of the money is going out of our funding platform with Stand ICT. New standards have been developed all the time. This is where the impact is coming from. So we can see that there's engagement via our standards program supports. 41 applicants have contributed to development of brand new standards, and 35 are currently working on or contributing to setting up new technical committees and working groups and subcommittees, which are focused around the emerging technology areas by the standards development organizations. And you can see some of them are listed there in terms of the standards, privacy information management, age assurance systems, industry specification groups by ETSI, health information implementation groups, and you can see that the working groups there are spread across, British Standards, ETSI, Sensenlink, and ISO. The Observatory then also has a second function, Stand ICT project has a second function, which is the European Observatory. And the European Observatory harvests collections of emerging technology standards across different disciplines, starting with the 5 priority areas of big data, smart cities, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, IoT, 5G, and creating a repository of these standards, which is searchable on the website. And as we do expand our work program with new technical working groups, we extend into more standards which get uploaded onto our repository. And we have discussion groups which run around those that repository, allow people to engage with the standards development process and find out more information about it via the discussion forums themselves, but also by engaging with these webinars as and when they become available. So the repository then is the hub to keep track of the landscape, or the standards landscape, and we go through routine standards landscape investigations and publish those reports for the European Commission, and then also do gap analysis in relation to where the next generation standards should be developed, and which may become part of a European Parliament directive to Sensenlec or ETSI. The technical working groups mentioned beforehand include likes of AI and blockchain and smart cities, which we're currently doing the webinar on, cybersecurity, trust information, big data, digital twin, and then the academy, which is used for education around teaching and standardization. Smart cities is the key one we're interested in here. Joel is the chair of the smart cities technical working group, has been involved in coordinating the landscape report, which has been just going to publication at the moment and will be made publicly available and has been signed actually by Eddie. The foreword has been signed by Eddie from the European Commission. This is what the previous landscape report looks like. It was called a bird's eye view of ICT standardization in AI. And it had up to when this was published, or this snapshot was taken, was 1,803 individual views and 1,400 downloads of the landscape document. It's become a sort of a reference document for people who are interested in standardization in relation to AI, to see what's available out there and what standards development organizations are involved in the various initiatives around AI standardization. The Academy then, which is chaired by Brian McCullough from HP, is charged with, I suppose, developing collateral around education about standardization. So the US Academy works with the ISO Academy and with the NATO standards training people and with EURAS to bring together a sort of a common area, common repository of standards education collateral, working with leading academics also in the area, like Ivana Mijatovic, who's the president of EURAS, to create state-of-the-art education and training material around standardization, particularly ICT standardization, which is the remit of Stand ICT. And the Walk and Talk seminars then are ways of informing the community on a regular basis about various initiatives that are ongoing within Stand ICT, and we try and coordinate them around the launch of the publications. So there's information to back up the reports, the landscape reports on AI, and the forthcoming landscape report by Joel in smart cities. So keep tuned in to standict.eu on a regular basis, and you'll be able to keep up to date on the various standards initiatives. And the fifth open call then for people who are interested in engaging in standardization, like whether to provide comments on existing standards documents, or maybe you're interested in becoming editors or conveners of standards working groups and getting engaged with their national body, whether it's NSAI in Ireland or BSI in the UK, or DIN or AFNOR in Germany and France. You can get the information about what's the best way to go about that in Stand ICT, and we can fund your activities if you have a good proposal in relation to work you want to carry out. So just have a look at the Stand ICT website and look at the fifth open call to see where we can support you in your work. So I want to try and be as brief as possible. There's a lot of information there. The presentation will be available to you, and you can go through it at your leisure. And I'm happy to answer questions during the panel session and later on as well. Thanks very much, John.
Thanks, Ray. You went well over your 5 minutes, but because you invited me to begin with, I didn't stop you. And also because obviously this is absolutely core to what we're trying to deliver today and for the next steps. Just to say that when you and I first met, and it wasn't that long ago, this year, the main discussions that we were having across with IEEE as well, and we've been having these discussions with other SDOs, is that although we build and deliver lots of standards in smart cities, not just, there are enormous issues. There's a gap between delivering these standards and actually getting them adopted within cities. So the analysis and reports of what standards are available is critical across the board on a global level. Being backed by the European Commission is fantastic work that you're doing. But it's one of the tools that when I speak to people like Najat and within Africa, it's one of the critical tools, standards to be able to develop smarter cities. So thanks, Ray. I'll pass on to our next speaker, who represents the Islamic world and I believe also 54 nations across the globe. And also we've had discussions to initiate what tools are required and what sort of processes required for digital transformation. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Fouad El Arni, who's Director of Smart Cities Initiatives at the Islamic World Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. A much shorter acronym is ICESCO. Thank you so much, Dr. Fouad, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Joel, for giving me this opportunity to present ICESCO initiatives related to smart, sustainable and resilient cities. Just to give you a very quick overview about ICESCO, I would like to share with you this video, which is 1 minute video, please.
The countries of the Islamic world are and have always been rich in vibrant cultures, productive human capital, and abundant natural resources, in need of collective efforts that employ this richness to achieve sustainable development. To that purpose, the mission of the Islamic World Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, ICESCO, has been, since its founding in 1982 as an international non-profit organization, to ensure the development of its 54 member states in the fields of education, science, culture and communication. Spread over Africa, the Arab region and Asia, ICESCO's programs, initiatives and activities have been tailor-made for the particular needs and priorities of the beneficiary countries. We at ICESCO are committed to the equitable advancement of humanity for a peaceful and prosperous future.
So indeed, as we said at the beginning, we are 54 member countries covering all America, South America, African region, and Asia region. And smart, sustainable, and resilient cities are one of our priority. Please give me the. Is one of our priorities. In science and technology sectors, mainly on the orientation for the development and promotion of emerging technologies and the orientation for greening the future and fostering a positive climate action plan. There is no doubt today that there is an urgent need today for the Islamic world, accelerated by the COVID pandemic, for developing smart, sustainable and resilient city and upgrading conventional city to adopt future of a smart and green city, and for promotion of use of ICT and emerging technology for ensuring human well-being.
Fred, can you just change to your presentation mode, swap to screens, because we can see your notes.
Okay. So many achievements have been made by ICESCO. Just our technical service is trying to settle this issue. Many achievements have been made by Cisco for several years in this topic. We produced an action plan for green cities and their connection to the achievement of sustainable development goals. So you can see the screen now?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, so we produced an action plan for green cities and their connection to the achievement of sustainable development goals, integrating smart issues like smart transportation, digitalization. We launched the project. We launched the project of the environmental friendly capital civilization each 2 years. We launched also the Green City Award in the Islamic world each 2 years. For 2019, we have 3 winners: Nur Sultan in Kazakhstan, Agadir in Morocco, and Kampala in Uganda. We organized 2 international expert meetings for promoting green and smart city in the Islamic world in 2018 and 2019 in Asia and Arab region, in Azerbaijan and in Qatar. We organized a Cisco International Seminar in collaboration with UNESCO and UCLG Africa. The main objective of this seminar was the transition towards smart city to face future challenges. And also we organized a partners meeting for designing an action plan and roadmap for the implementation of the seminar recommendation. This is the photo for the international seminar and for the partners meeting. Also we launched Cisco has produced an action plan for green and smart cities in May 2017. This action plan was approved during the Ministerial Conference of Minister of Environment. Moreover, we launched the Cisco, the Islamic Green City Excellence Awards. And the main criteria of these awards, as you can see on the screen, is to have clean, sustainable, and smart transport in the city, to have green, to perform green, smart buildings, also to be sustainable, to have sustainable energy use and conservation, water and wastewater management, and many other issues. What is the future steps? We are, with our partners, we are targeting to create a Cisco chairs on smart cities, to have and to implement regional training workshop for stakeholders on the development of the concept of smart, resilient, and sustainable cities, to have also and to launch expert meetings on the development of the methodological guide for the stable implement of smart, sustainable, and resilient city, and also launching of a professional and master degree program on smart city in collaboration with specialized universities. This is all what I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much, and I am waiting for your questions.
Dr. Fouad, thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, what is of growing interest is the discussion of cooperation. So within the roadmap that you talk about, within the action plans as well, you know, one of the strong outcomes that we would love to have today as well is to extend that cooperation across some of the other organizations that are involved today, like, you know, the European Commission and obviously the UN as well, and OASC, if they can get involved. It's very, very important that we have a great balance today of discussions from the viewpoint, not just of the technological world, but from the world of those that need the technology, which are the countries and cities. I'd like to move swiftly along then to welcome Martin Brinskoff, who's the chair of Open and Agile Smart Cities, which is a very important leading smart cities network around the globe, promoting and supporting the building of the foundations for global markets where digital services can scale into sustainable models. Dr. Fouad, could I ask you if you could leave the space and close your sharing, and we could pass to Martin. If not, Philomena, if you could help us to close. Philomena, could you close the session so that we could pass the sharing of the screen?
Yes, I'm on it.
Martin, because I think they're having difficulty.
Do you hear
it's okay.
me well?
It's okay.
There he is. There's Martin. Thank you, Martin.
Okay, so you hear me and you see me and you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thanks a lot, everyone, for the invitation to join here and for the kind words. Very exciting to hear from the colleagues how well the world of standards relating to the ground, the local level, how it's perceived in different parts, because I think there are really some similarities and there's also some concerns regarding where we're heading with the standards. So I'd like to offer a short perspective of that. Yes, so my name is Martin Brinskoff. I represent here OESC, and I've been involved in lots of standardization. OESC, as you said, is a global network of local administrations founded and headquartered in Europe. What we're trying to do is we try to bring together a voice towards, well, the market, the technology providers, but certainly also regulators and standardization fora on what it means from the ground when this virtualization, when the smartness comes down to the ground, because that's where the local administrations actually have to sort stuff, and it's not so simple. So digitalization was all about, virtualization and software is eating the world, but now it's really coming down to the ground with the sensors, with the digital twins, with becoming an integrated part of local administration. So how do we handle that? It's not an easy thing. And well, the ask from technology is very simple. We need two things. We need protection of our citizens, and we need innovation to be, more sustainable, more productive, and more inclusive. That's clear. But how do we get that balance and get both? That's of course a challenge. And it's not so much solutions we're looking for. We're looking for ways through all the dilemmas. I don't want to go into a lot of details, but we know what these dilemmas are. We know that this flexibility is great for some, but it's excluding other parts of our populations. Something like, just here, what about overview versus surveillance? There are not solutions there. There are choices to be made, and we want the technologies to support the political choices. So number 8 here, planning. How do we plan? Eddie, you mentioned digital twins. Yes, we want all of this data essentially to be available for planning, for discourse, for dialogue, to organize our lives in a way where we are protected and innovative. That's what everybody wants. So just to say, navigating through this future of virtualization taking place is what standards should be helping out with. Now, we've been looking a little bit about what's then happening in lots of countries and places, and this is just a bricolage of such things. I happen to be chairing stuff on the global level, the European level, and also in my home country, Denmark. And this is what the standards landscape looks like. Yes, you have the ISO IECs, the ITUs, you have the global regional fora like ETSI, CENELEC, and then you have your national bodies, in this case, Danish standards. And we try to navigate, and we just came up with a guide for cities and communities and their providers and the regulators what to do. And one of the things I want to focus on here is that there's a strong recommendation to ensure, what Eddie also mentioned about the minimum of interoperability, because we will never have a grand design that everybody just adopts. It's basically to making us too vulnerable in so many ways. So how do we achieve this common ground even across different standards? So that's what we would like to see from the receiving end of this. So in OESC, that's actually what we do. Being a voice of many local communities, we try to formulate the minimal interoperability mechanisms that would actually work. And then you can express them through certain standards, and that would be great. And we have a very good collaboration with, many of the standardizations again, I don't want to go into detail. So making it more operational, this is the example from the European side. And what we, again, are trying to do is that we are trying, across all the policy instruments, across all the specifications that are coming, on European level, but also local level, how can we find some kind of common ground here? So that's what we call MIMS plus the European dimension, so that it is aligned. And of course, the technology cannot stand alone. It comes together with a lot of legal perspective, capacity building, the monitoring, measuring, and of course the financial part. So just to say that these are very practical means that represent the voice of a ton of local administrations representing citizens towards the market. And that's a very concrete way. And we hope that this minimal linking of the different standardization initiatives can really help move us forward in the quite, let's say, complex world of formal standards. And so finally, just to end off on what is the end goal? So Eddie, you mentioned digital twins. Well, yeah, but why do we need them? We need them because the current way that government, and both local government and other governments, national and the more federal level, are organized very much into these silos. Well, data doesn't respect silos. And it's suboptimal if we build these data ecosystems only for each silo. So Eddie, you showed the T there from EIF. So what we're moving towards is a holistic government where we can govern and provide protection and innovation for our citizens based on the data that are flowing around in a secure and transparent manner. And of course, we could go into lots of detail what that would mean. So well, how do we get from data to digital twins, and how does that unfold onto the computing continuum with the edge and 5G and so on, all the skills that are involved, and how do we handle it governance wise? But maybe we can come back to that in the panel. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Martin. Yes, the discussion of digital twins is becoming something that we're hearing about more and more, and that there are discussions on. And I think one of the issues that we have when we talk to cities is that they're still trying to struggle with the idea of other things that were going on, such as what is a smart city, how do you make it sustainable and resilient, and also discussions about how cities have changed and the perspective on cities have changed since COVID. So we should come back to digital twins if we have time. But it's also something that, again, requires definition, and I think it will change over time as well. But anyway, let me now continue with our last but not least person in the panel, who's an esteemed expert and colleague representing the United Nations today within the Department of Economic and Social Affairs. I'd like to welcome Denis Souza, who's the Governance and Public Administration Officer.
Thank you very much, Joel. I hope you can see my slides.
Yes, thank you, Dennis, and we see you too. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just start. I know we are running late. My name is Denis Souza. I work in United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Today, I want to talk about our work related to cities, local digital government. This work is part of the United Nations e-government survey, where we look at all the national portals of 193 UN member states. I know 54 is a very popular number in this panel, but we have 193 members, and we, with the United Nations e-government survey, we look at how they deliver public services online, and some of the speakers already mentioned public administration 2.0, e-government, etc. So that's the big picture for us. But starting recently, we've also started looking at cities, how cities deliver online public services. And in this presentation, this is what I wanted to talk to you about local online service index. In 2018, we started as a pilot project together with United Nations University. In 2020, we've increased to 100 cities, and in this upcoming edition, we will look at the most populous city in each of 193 UN member states. And the reasons for these are really obvious. I mean, local municipalities are closer to people, and also we want to help cities measure their progress, and also a motivation for them. But more importantly, to learn from each other. Maybe, I mean, as some of the esteemed panelists said, most cities are facing similar problems. So it will be a modest contribution from our side if we can bring the similar problems and similar cities together. In this local online service index, our unit of study is the municipality portal. So we do a preparatory survey. We send out questions to the most populous cities in each 193 countries, and we use that survey as a preparatory. But we have our own methodology. This is around these 4 main areas: technology, content, participation, and engagement. And we assess each city portal with 2 native speakers. Ideally, at least one of them lives in the city. And as you can imagine, 193 cities, we have like around 400 volunteers working on this right now. So I just want to highlight some findings from our most recent. Yes, I was trying to move the Zoom screen, and now I succeeded. I can see my slides better. So I just want to highlight some findings from the most recent edition. First of all, content provision was the highest. I mean, most cities were really scoring highest in content. And on the other hand, the service provision was the lowest for us. So again, we are talking about smart cities here, interoperability. But if you look at majority of the city portals that we assess, you would be surprised how the gap between those cities they are really doing and those cities they are really catching up. And as you can imagine, this is also very much related to digital divides. I mean, across the world. We also, related to participation, we noted that most of the cities are depending heavily on various social media networks rather than their own portals. This is just a finding which is, I think, they are tapping into third-party sources efficiently. These are a few numbers at this stage. Is not that much surprising, but for example, Moscow ranked highest in 2018. They are also in the top performance in 2020, along with other cities. So one thing, this is a bit complicated slide. I'm sorry for that, but the message of this slide is there are only a couple of cities performing better than their national portal. If you look at the y-axis on the right side of the slide, it's the local online service index, and the x-axis is national portal. So if you just simply compare how city portals are doing against their national portals, you see that most of the dots are on the right side, which tells us that national portal, there is more investment in national portals and national public service delivery than cities. And there are only a couple of cities, as you can see highlighted in the red ellipse, doing better, which also tells us that there is really more room for improvement here. The other findings are really pretty much, I covered this. And I think, again, my main message is there are lots of, even in this panel, I've learned a lot. There are lots of organizations we can work together with. And I think a lot of cities need help. We are planning to use this tool to raise awareness and also to help cities more invest in their technologies, and be it smart city or digital twins or others. So we are here to work together with all the interested organizations in improving local digital government in all the cities around the world. Thank you, Joel. I'll stop here.
Thanks so much, Denise. Another tool, another set of tools as well, to be able to measure progress within cities of their portals, and then be able to measure them against national, but other cities as well as on an international level is critical. It's a very strong part of the communication that cities have with their local population as well as visiting populations. So I think general cooperation across the board would be fantastic, and hopefully this webinar will help to build that even further. I just wanted to say at this point, so welcome questions from the audience as well. We have a very large audience of around 40 people that have joined us. We have a couple of questions, but a couple of questions already answered. The first one is yes, of course, we'll be sharing all the presentations from colleagues. And the second question was about standards and how important standards are as a tool for developing the digital transformation. And Ray answered it beautifully. They are absolutely core, but it's also our responsibility to ensure that they're well communicated, and that we can provide, if you like, an instruction guide as to how to integrate them into city strategies and municipality strategies when they're developing their solutions. What I wanted to do now is just to go back to people. We don't have an enormous amount of time, but if we can just broaden the discussion and look at how standards and some of these global communities represented here in different organizations, how they see what next steps are or first steps are to gaining sustainable digital transformation. So can I pass back to Najat to get the ball rolling, and then we'll just pass from speaker to speaker with regards to where does UCLG Africa stand in the priority at the moment post-COVID, and in helping and being a facilitator to digital transformation.
Thank you, Joel. The first of all is to maintain our activities because as you may know, next year we are supposed to have our flagship events in Kenya, in Kisumu. We are supposed to prepare the election, the statutory meetings, to prepare these events. It's the huge gathering of local governance in Africa each 3 years. The second issue is to prepare and empower our members on the digital, because you know better than me, they are facing a lot of issues. For example, when we organize events, whether they don't have the correct devices, or they don't have the connection to internet, the appropriate infrastructure. We need also to work to promote a holistic, coherent, systemic, and integrated approach when we talk about the digital or the smart. And this is where I'm asking all of you if you can help this organization, because a lot is done in Africa at local level. Many initiatives from all the actors and the stakeholders, but we don't see the impact and on the population and citizens. So it's a new deal for our organization, which we cannot do it alone in a silo. We need all those who have experience, knowledge, expertise to help us to create this enabler environment for our members, and in particular for the cities. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Najat, when we're talking in our conversations, one of the big discussions is a digital divide. And here within these groups, we're talking about, let's say, Europe, then we talk about Africa, then we can talk about other countries around the world that are Islamic. We're not all in the same position. Each country and cities within those countries are not all in the same position today with what the status is on providing digital services. And it seems to me that that there can be a lot of cooperation from areas of the world that have had success stories that have put together standards, guidelines, and solutions within the digital, and help cooperate in areas that are less have less understanding of taking the first steps. Can I pass to Eddie? Maybe you could help us a little bit on what type of cooperation we could start to to deliver with groups like UCLG, but even ICESCO in taking first steps.
Yeah, no, of course, and our colleagues from the external development aid are also doing a seminar at the end of November, I think 23rd of November, also precisely cooperation with other countries. But on your original question, what can we do? It's really to start from that common vision. And that is what we've tried to do through this movement, because otherwise it adds up. I mean, we do not, on interoperability and standards, we often had discussions, let's choose one standard, and then we had the competition on standards. Some of you will still remember the video standard discussion and stuff. Those are old days. That's no longer the policy that we have in the European Union. And luckily, many don't have that policy anymore either. Then you get a conversation about which organizations should do what, and should we have government-led standards or industry-led standards. Now, I'm between Joel and some of the others. I don't have to explain that conversation to you, but I think more and more, and that's where Ray plays an important role with Stand ICT, we bring those communities together, and the essence is it doesn't matter where these standards are done as long as they are compatible. And I see a very positive development of organizations adopting each other's standards or having joined up conversations on this. A third element, and I come back a little bit to Gerard Frerich's question in the question and answer, is do we have a horizontal base and then go sectoral, or do we start sectoral and then expand it to other sectors? And I think you can do both. It really depends. I mean, I see Ray rightly answered that we think that a lot of the digital technology is federating. If you have 5G technology, why develop different communication technology that is in parallel to, or parallel to Wi-Fi? There's a federating element of technology to start with in the IoT world, and then you should deploy it into sectors. But I've also seen, and we have a good example on the energy side with a so-called standard, I will spare you the details, SAREF, where we started on the energy side, but now we say maybe we should apply that on water, on buildings, on smart cities. It's another way of doing it. It doesn't matter where you start, as long as the vision is to do that collective and in a sharing way. And I think, again, Stand ICT is a very important part there. My last point on your question, Joel, is I showed you that slide with the stacks, and I noticed also from what Najat said about the importance of having the infrastructure right. If you don't have communication infrastructure, you can have beautiful standards. It's not going to work. If you don't have civil servants integrated in an ecosystem that is local, it is not going to work. All our solutions are different in each of the countries, because some are more government-led countries and others are more business-led countries. The whole important thing for us is to make that local ecosystem work, and hence also this concept of minimum interoperability mechanisms that I hope will also become more pervasive in the narrative that I find in IEEE and in the Stand ICT, that we actually make that a starting point of this conversation, because then you will find that it's so much space for a lot of people, business and governments, to make money and also to provide much better services to our citizens.
Yeah, very, very wise words, I would say that. So let me just pass it to Dr. Fouad and the perspective from his organization.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Joel. What we can learn from the pandemic is that the transformation to digital technologies and digital transformation now for our member states and for the Islamic world became a necessity. It's not a choice. We need to urgently move to digitalization. But in the fact, when we look to the reality, we will find, as you know, the Islamic world, there is a lot of diversity. We have the African continents, where there is some country missing some necessity, basic necessity for well-being, like missing water, food, energy. Sometimes there is no internet infrastructure. And in the same time, we are trying to foster these new concepts in these regions. How we can find this equilibrium between, providing them this basic necessity and trying to promote this new concept and convince them to adopt this new concept. This is the big challenges now that we are facing. What we have also in the same time, we have in our member country, we have some countries we are dealing well with these concepts, like Emirates, like Qatar, like Indonesia, Malaysia, Kazakhstan, in Nur Sultan, Azerbaijan. And what ISISCO should do now, and our organization and other organizations, is this South-South cooperation, fostering this South-South cooperation and also North-South cooperation, to make to transfer this know-how, to transfer this knowledge from member country through member countries. And for this, we are adopting many tools and many means. We are doing some expert meetings where we are inviting all our member states, trainings for stakeholders. We are, we prepared our action plan for the next years and strategy for promoting green, and we are not dividing between, sustainable green cities and resilient cities. For us, all these concepts should be promoted together, to be smart but at the same time to be sustainable and to be resilient, because we are also in our Islamic world and with the world facing a lot of challenges regarding natural disasters and this pandemic, also this crisis, how to be resilient for the next crisis, pandemic crisis or new natural disaster crisis, to be sustainable in the same time to face climate changes, and in the same time to be smart by promoting new digital technology, new ICT technologies, and we are dealing with this. We are working on this hardly. And for our action plan, we did this, this partners meeting last time, and we draft a roadmap for this. And we are planning with our partner, UCLG Africa and Joel and many other partners from our member countries and from North part, to implement this roadmap and action plan together. So federating and joining hands and efforts will help us to help and support our member states to jump in the next, era or digital transformation and all this, and to adopt all these concepts. This is our vision here in the organization.
Thanks, Dr. Payet. And I assume from your words that it's a federation that can be opened up to the other organizations that are within this discussion in the webinar, and I think it will strengthen. There is a lot of success stories. There are a lot of tools out there. The European Commission is a huge leader in some of this work, and the resources that something like the Observatory that Ray directs as well has huge resources that are open and shareable. So the big thing I see and that I've learned a lot about over the last few months discussing projects with you, Francesca, and with the UCGL Africa, is affordability as well. The main issue over COVID is the fact that although maybe in Europe we had a better chance to smart work or to get our education remotely, although we had huge issues as well, and there have been issues even in places like America that have identified big problems in the digital divide. Affordability with infrastructures in place for telecommunications are actually cutting out perhaps the majority, I would say, of African populations and populations even in places like Latin America, where the cities may be touched upon, but not necessarily the rest. So I think hand in hand, as Eddie was saying, we need to look at it from a holistic point of view and try to work out a sort of a playbook where you have your tools, where you have some best practices and leadership from those that have had success in giving access to data, the internet, digital services. And today there was a question also about healthcare, which may not have been mentioned so far, but of course healthcare is key and can have enormous benefit from the digital side, as we've seen through COVID. I'll just pass to Martin now and get your perspective from an organization that runs a network of cities across the world.
Thanks. I'll be very brief. So it's an incredibly interesting discussion, and these are very, very relevant issues. If I may say something I would hope for and something I would hope not happen. So the worst thing that could happen is that we have something which we then call a standard, and everybody implements it and it doesn't work. That will be incredibly unhelpful. And unfortunately, we are seeing pushes for standardization just because it's frustrating not to have standards. The problem is if we insist that we give a big S standard, here it is, and then governments on all levels just implement them, and they are not matching the challenges that we have in reality. So the healthcare domain, of course, was mentioned now, the accessibility and the whole economic situation locally that needs to work. If the standards we produce do not deliver positive impact, then forget about it. They will be, frustrating for local governments, and it would take some time before we discover. So I would warn strongly against just jumping to standards because we need them. The other thing is, I would go for, a minimal common ground, because we need diversity around the globe. It's very clear, but we need some things that we can agree on. So that my hope is that the fora where the different standardization, organizations, initiatives are coming together, they do exist, but I would hope that they also get the political and financial backing so that they can deliver what we actually can agree on and evolve those minimal, let's call them standards, together in reality, where we get the feedback loop from how they're helping people, and then we can take it step by step. So those would be my comments.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Obviously, like all technology, we don't want it just for gadgets. We need to make sure that they actually serve a purpose. And sometimes technologists will get together and create things that they are highly passionate about and not necessarily practical on a ground level when you look at it, for example, from the point of view of municipality or even the stakeholders like the communities themselves. And I think the first step, visibility to the standards that have been produced with, if possible, no competition, which is really hard between SDOs. But I think we're also realizing that if we fight each other all the time, then nobody gets heard. And so there are a few standards out there that are, of course, being used, but the majority are actually not being used. And what's happening is that companies and corporations are coming in and setting down the platforms that cities use with complete disregard for interoperability, and then maybe a new set of municipality political leaders come in and make a complete change. So I think it's us that have to get our act together by stepping back and just saying, we're doing this and we need to do it together. We already have enough standards, and there are more standards coming along, for example, in ethics, which are really welcome because we're getting some huge issues with responsibility towards the real stakeholders of cities, who are the population, us human beings. But I think the work done by Ray's group and through the European Commission and EDI in putting out there what those standards are, whichever STOs they come from, and even if they come from government or alliances within corporations as well, is incredibly important, because I've not seen that before. And so to have a single report where you can look at those standards and you can search them, and then looking at the gaps that there are, hopefully will allow us to work with groups such as UCLG in Africa and Dr. Fouad's group, and even with the UN, to get feedback on and also use cases to understand how they can be used or have been used. Let me just pass Dennis for the last couple of minutes, and then we've promised to close off by 1:15 my time here in Rome. So Dennis. Dennis, sorry, we can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're speaking.
Yes, I was looking for that button. I shared a link here, the Secretary General's Common Agenda. It's a bit global and a high-level overview, but you can have a look at it. Like he's calling for all the nations to make digital access as individual human right by 2030, and there are many references to digital technologies, not necessarily the standards we discuss here, but we could bring them into the picture in different cooperations. But I also want to highlight that as Sustainable Development Goals came a few times, again, in a recent report by the Secretary General, there is a best case scenario for the world to achieve the SDGs. And in this scenario, he sets lots of digital consumer innovations. So this is high in the UN agenda, and also in an upcoming meeting that we hope to have in person and hybrid for the first time after the pandemic or during the pandemic in Katowice in Poland early December in Internet Governance Forum. We will be able to talk more of these and bring also partners. So this is what I wanted to say. And I will put this report where the best case scenario is digital also in the chat.
Thanks, Denise. I mean, I think if Philomena, I'm not sure how the chat information that's coming out that, for example, Denise has added, there's been a few questions. Is it possible to pass it so that all the audience has visibility to these links and points? And I think it's a perfect way to end in the sense that I think the problem with these webinars is they get great discussions going and we get a little bit of insight, but it really just touches the tip of the iceberg. And what I would love to do with Ray, and I'd like to leave Ray the last couple of sentences. I would like to be able to continue this discussion in other forums with this group and even expand it to other organizations that couldn't be part of it today. I'll thank everybody for their incredibly interesting interventions, and as I say, hopefully this will lead to continued discussions, but also help in working together and using all of these tools and information repositories that we put together so that we can help to develop areas that need it most. Because very often we focus on like the ranking of a smart city on a global index, and you look at places like Singapore and you think, oh wow, they're amazing. But outside of the 100 cities, we've already mentioned tens of thousands, and there are obviously hundreds of thousands that we need to provide better access to get these tools. And I'd also like to thank behind the scenes organizers, Trust IT Services, Francesco Osimanti, Philomena Minacchielli, and Kirsty McDonald for the organizing everything and making this happen. And I'll pass you to Ray, and thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much, Joel, and thanks for putting together an absolutely fantastic webinar with great speakers. And I'd like also to thank the European Commission, Eddie and his colleagues, for supporting the work that we do in relation to Standard ICT and helping to increase and raise all ships when it comes to engagement in standardization worldwide. And Standard ICT and our projects are standards SDO agnostic. We take all comers. we like promoting and encouraging standardization and interoperability. We want systems that work globally We wanted to lower the barriers to entry to standardization where possible, and the Commission, through its funding of the open calls, have done great strides in making this happen, and we're thankful to them for that. And in relation to smart cities are like the ultimate use case when it comes to standardization, because of all of the horizontal technologies that coalesce around smart cities, because you've got the 5G and the IoT and the AI and the smart, so it's next generation emerging tech, all which coalesce around that. And it's good to see, the UCLG and IGESCO and their engagement in standardization in relation to smart cities as well. And I echo Joel's words in continuing this conversation. And Stand ICT are all about collaboration, not duplication. So we want to collaborate with everybody, and we'd like to continue this conversation with Denise and with Dr. Fuad after the event is over, so that we can reach out, and it's great to have Martin's perspective as well from the open cohort of standardization as well. We do a lot of work with Oasis as well, and we're interested in supporting OASC and the people involved in open source and open standards as well. So thanks very much, everybody. It's been fantastic. It's a pity we only have such a short period of time. Thanks to Eddie again, and to Dr. Fuad and Natchez, and to Joel and to Dennis and all the team behind the scenes for helping out make this a success. Joel, you can have the last word.
Oh, Ray, I thank you for doing that. I was about to say I'm going to have the last word anyway. I just wanted to say thank you to you as well. It's a great opportunity, but the main thing is let's keep this going. I'm happy. Also, if Philomena, you want to share my email contact, and Ray, I assume the same thing, just so that we can put everyone together, including those in the audience that we not necessarily know who they are, but I'm sure there's a lot of organizations out there that we'd like to bring in. Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for inviting us.